The gun, and then we'll go.
We'll never surrender.
Skin boots on a Saturday night.
Hello guys, this is the Gaming Revolution here and welcome back to an all new Black Ops 3 Zombies video. Today we're going to be launching another new series here today on the channel. Now what this series is going to be is that we're going to be exploring the untold mysteries of the Call of Duty Zombies storyline, but with a twist. Usually in my Call of Duty Zombies storyline videos I pick a subject and try to explain it to you. I usually do subjects that other people haven't explained before because that's what I like to do. Cough cough. But I was thinking to myself, the Call of Duty Zombies storyline follows a set pathway put in place by Treyarch. What if these rules and boundaries that they have been put in place could be altered in any way? What could be the possible outcome? So today, to kick off this series, we're going to be exploring what would happen to the future of the Call of Duty Zombies universe if we didn't collect the 1.0 souls within the Black Ops 3 Zombies Easter eggs. Now the thing is about this series is that many of these realities actually exist. Because we are essentially stuck in an endless cycle and we have been repeating the process of Black Ops 3 Zombies over and over and over again, the process of which we have carried out to collect the 1.0 souls would have carried out multiple times, and in some of these times of this process carrying out we would have failed and we would have died, we would have not been able to finish the Easter egg, and we would have not collected the 1.0 souls, and this would then lead the events to carry out in a different fashion. Because we have an infinite amount of multiverses, it essentially means that the storyline that is carrying out within Black Ops 3 Zombies has not only happened over and over and over again, but it's happening over and over and over again with a different set of our crew. And that's what we're going to be exploring within today's video. So if you do go on to enjoy this video, by the end of it, make sure to drop a like down below. Let's try and go for 1,115 likes on today's video, as well as subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future upload here on the channel, and don't forget to turn notifications on to ensure furthermore that you never miss an upload. But that's all out of the way, let's get straight on in to the video. So we're going to jump into this assuming that the events that have taken place in Shadows of Evil with Richtofen stealing the summoning key have happened per as usual. He has gotten the summoning key and then he has made his way back to the Giants, to which Origins Richtofen or Primus Richtofen then kills the 1.0 version, aka his younger self, and then we learn that that version goes on to be the undead Richtofen that we see within the Call of Duty Zombies comic books that goes off on the big quest with the transit crew, which ultimately leads to us getting the blood vials of the transit crew. So we did not collect our soul within the Giants. We learned from the Call of Duty Zombies timeline that Richtofen actually collected his soul from an innocent Richtofen from a completely other universe that we have no other information about. The reason the Richtofen was killed on the Giants, as I said, was for the sole purpose of being able to use undead Richtofen. But what happens if we fail to light the beacon on the Giant? Obviously there is no so-called main Easter egg on the Giant, but we light the beacon, which allows Maxis to come and find us. What happens if we fail to light the beacon? Well, we know from the Giant and we know from quotes throughout Black Ops 3 Zombies that our characters are starting to become more and more alike to their regular selves, as essentially from all of the fractures we have different fragments of ourselves. So because our characters have created a paradox by there being not only the Primus version but also the 1.0 versions in the same realm, it means that they are slowly becoming more and more alike. We see Richtofen throughout Black Ops 3 Zombies becoming crazier and crazier, and we see them mention things from perspectives of the other characters that they shouldn't know about, because as we hear from Gerard Crovey from this quote from Dr. Monty,
you know how people say that every snowflake is unique? That every single one is an individual, a one-of-a-kind, irrefutable evidence of the miracles of Mother Nature? Well, it's not true. Snowflakes aren't all that unique. There are really only about 12 different designs. The point I'm making is that you lot are hardly one-of-a-kind snowflakes. You were fragmented across a multitude of different realities, but each and every one is basically the same. You are all you. The liar, the braggart, the drunk. The one who didn't know what he had until it was gone. The good soldier. Never disobeyed orders, never broke protocol. Still kicked ass all the same. A loyal servant. A warrior out of time, born too late or born too early. Honor bound to dying traditions. For man-child, broken and twisted by a life burdened with knowledge. Living like a soul who is perpetually drowning.
Although we have multiple versions, in fact an infinite amount, since we have an infinite amount of multiverses from what we can assume of our characters, they are all essentially one. So if we weren't to light the beacon and we were to either die, which would essentially put us in the forest, so whenever we die on Black Ops 3 Zombies or leave the game, we obviously see the forest cutscene, which is the ether, so it's the realm between realms. If you don't know what this is, I've already made a whole storyline video about this. It's probably the best explanation for trying to explain this. So whenever we die, we see this forest place because it's essentially the mid-game realm, and then whenever we play the game again, all we're doing is we're playing it from a new cycle, or not even a new cycle, possibly another version of it, where things happen slightly differently. So if we fail to light the beacon, what would mean is that slowly our characters would start to become more and more and more alike to their older selves, because of the fact that the World at War characters, or the 1.0 characters, are present as well. So what would happen is that it would cause our characters to all revert to their older selves. Primus Richtofen would become the Richtofen that he killed, and obviously the other three characters are currently in their cryo chambers, and then our other three characters would become their 1.0 selves. And all that it would mean is that the events of World at War would carry on as if they happened normally. So we would jump back into that original storyline and it would carry out the same. Richtofen would go off on his grand scheme and do all of that crazy stuff, and just everything would carry out per as normal. Now moving over to Der Eisendrache. Now Der Eisendrache takes place directly after the Giant. It is in the same universe. So after the Giant, they then get on a Origins robot and then they travel to Der Eisendrache, which is obviously set in the Hohenwerfen Castle in Austria, and the Giant is set in Lower Silesia in Germany. So it is quite a distance, but it's not too unreasonable. I mean, they are freaking 1,000-foot robots. You can travel some great distance on there. But what happens if we don't collect the 1.0 soul of Dempsey within Der Eisendrache? Let's just say when the rocket crashes, Dempsey dies or something like that, or we fail to complete the Easter egg. And obviously if we die, then we would go back to the forest, because that's sort of the mid-game place. It's the realm between realms, and then whenever we would resume the game, we would resume back in a new or alternate cycle where the same events have happened previously. Just the outcome will be different because of how we play. So if we do fail to collect Dempsey's 1.0 soul, what it would mean is that we would still be able to collect the 1.0 soul of Takeo within Zetsubo no Shima, which is another universe, bear in mind. The Giant and Der Eisendrache take place in the same universe. Zetsubo and Garod are in a separate one. So it would mean the events of Zetsubo still transpire. It would mean that in the ending cutscene, they would still be able to go through the little portal and go through to Mob of the Dead to get their blood vials. And this is exactly how I think the storyline plays out, because obviously when we play Black Ops 3 Zombies, you can either play on solo, you can play 2-player, you can play 3-player, or you can play 4-player. And I think this is the way of Treyarch explaining the storyline of why you can play with different sets of characters. It is because the events are stuck in a constant cycle. We're constantly repeating it. So if we hop in a game of 2 players, all that it means is that it's happening in a setting where either the other 2 characters are missing or they're dead. So if we don't collect Dempsey's 1.0 soul, what it would mean is that we can still carry out Zetsubo and Garod per as normal, but when it gets to Revelations, it would mean that his child version of Dempsey wouldn't actually be within the house, so he wouldn't be able to enter Agartha from what I can assume. Now this happens the same for both Zetsubo no Shima as well as Garod Crovey. If our characters fail to get the 1.0 soul, then it will mean that they are incapable of being on Revelations, and that explains how we can play as 1-player, 2-player, 3-player or 4-player on Revelations, because of the fact that these events may have happened prior, because you've got to understand Revelations has taken place over and over and over again, so the events each time we play will happen slightly differently each time, and some of those times only some of our characters will be present, and some of the times all of the characters will be present. Now who knows, this could explain why within one of the Revelations trailer Peter McCain was present. Maybe there is an alternative reality that plays out in one of these universes as the cycle's constantly repeating, where one of the times somehow Peter McCain goes up through the portal that we see in the Gorod Krovi ending cutscene, and he goes through to Revelations with the other characters. Now, one thing I do want to note is obviously we can play as 1, 2, 3, or 4 players on the other maps as well, in between the Eisendrache and Revelations. Now, I think the reason for this is because, for example, if you just play as solo and you're not playing as Richtofen, you constantly hear our characters mention, we need to find Richtofen, or the other characters are missing, I'm going to have to try this out alone. And essentially what they're saying is the other characters are either dead or missing for whatever reason. We don't know why, but again, this is just showing how the storyline is constantly repeating. So in some of these versions, so in some of these cycles, in some of these alternative realities, things happen differently to which only some of our characters are present. Now, I think whenever we're playing when Richtofen is not there, I think what's happening here is that our 3 characters are actually going off on quests by themselves during that 2-year gap between Origins and the Giant. If you weren't aware, there was a 2-year gap between Origins and the Giant, and that's where Origins, or Primus Richtofen, went off on that mad quest with the summoning key and the chronorium and the transit crew and everything like that we see within the comic books. And I think during that time period, our characters could have gone off to try and solve this by themselves and try and collect the 1.0 souls by themselves. And that's why we hear our characters constantly mentioning about Richtofen being missing if you ever play on solo and you're not playing as Richtofen. Those are realities where they've gone off during that 2-year gap, I believe. As for when Richtofen is just playing on solo, maybe the other 3 characters have died on one of the previous maps in some of these alternative realities and they aren't present. Now, in terms of why within the ending cutscene we always see 4 players, is because the simple explanation is that they need to keep the storyline ongoing. So even if we complete an Easter egg on solo, it's obviously not going to show an alternative cutscene to which just that character is present, and instead it shows all of our characters. That's because it needs to keep the storyline progression going. So the storyline when our 4 characters are present on all of the maps is the linear storyline. However, when we play as 1, 2, or 3 players, that's the alternative storyline, which happens sometimes as this cycle is repeating over and over again. Sometimes things will happen differently and not all of our characters will be present. Sometimes we won't collect our souls, etc, etc. This may have been a very confusing video, but I wanted to get this into your mind that because of this constant cycle, things do happen differently each time, and sometimes not all of our characters will be present. It's just that that's not the linear storyline that we see within the Call of Duty Zombies timeline, as it wouldn't make for good storytelling if some of our characters were dead or missing. But this is all explained by the forest cutscene simply by the cycle restarting, and because it's happening an infinite amount of times, there's an infinite amount of possibilities that could happen whenever you play. That's why every game of zombies is unique. It happens differently every time, because the events that happen whenever you play zombies obviously have happened an infinite amount of times, as it's a constant cycle. So they happen very differently, or even just marginally differently each time. Hopefully this all made sense. I'm sure it was confusing, but anyways, thanks for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not here for latest and greatest Black Ops 3 zombies, World War 2 zombies, and Infinite Warfare zombies news and information. So anyways, thanks for watching, and bye.